Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindset-Conquest Podcast, where every week I'll be joined by a special guest who will be sharing what they've experienced as the biggest failure in their life, but most importantly, the lessons that they've learned from that experience. I'll be spending time with people that I've met throughout my life's journey in business, music, and sport. And the goal is to provide listeners like yourselves with the motivation needed to get through all of life's challenges and learn not to be afraid of failure, but rather to embrace it. Please like and subscribe and enjoy this episode. I'm Chris Atwell. On today's episode, I'm joined by Romano Sulit. Romano is a local physiotherapist in Markham, Ontario, and the owner of the popular boutique physiotherapy clinic, the Physio Spot. He's had a history of running large sports medicine clinics in Toronto, being an instructor for the Orthopaedic division of the Canadian Physiotherapy Association, and he's also a clinical instructor for the University of Toronto Physiotherapy program. In his off time, he enjoys fitness in the form of HIIT workouts like Crossfit, snowboarding, and skateboarding with his kids. All right. Welcome to the Mindset-Conquest Podcast. We have a very special guest today, Romano Sulit from Markham, Ontario. How are you, Romano?
Doing all right, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Right on. Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do for a living.
Well, I live in Markham. I'm a physiotherapist. I own my own clinic up here. I have a history of running some large sports medicine clinics. Eventually I ventured out, did my own thing. I'm also an educator, so I teach physiotherapists and I teach physiotherapy students. So I'm an instructor for the Orthopaedic division of the Canadian Physiotherapy Association of Canada. And I also teach for U of T, which is a local university here. I was born in Montreal. So
I didn't know that. Born in Montreal.
Yeah, born in Montreal. Moved around a lot when I was a kid. So we ended up moving to Toronto when I was young. Moved to the States, moved back to Toronto, and then moved around a lot until about high school, right? So I was a new kid all the time in school. Like every 2 years, I was the new kid, right? So I think that developed, that kind of affected how I developed, you know? I mean, you know what that's like. You were a military kid, right?
For that's a little right. While. Yeah, very familiar with that upbringing.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting when you're coming in as a new kid. You have to try to make friends right away. You have to kind of, assess how people are, how they'll react to you. So that I think that affected my personality a little bit. Right now, I mean, the thing I enjoy the most at work is treating people. I'm learning a little bit more about managing things, managing people, my own education, and going from there.
So why did you move around so much as a kid?
Well, my parents they immigrated here from the Philippines, and they're professionals. My dad was an engineer and my mom was a nurse. So they kind of went to wherever my dad had contracts, so they moved to Montreal. It was the biggest city in Canada at the time. And then I guess there was an outflux of some of the companies. So they ended up moving to wherever the jobs were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you don't speak French, do you?
Un peu, mais lentement.
No,
really slow.
Not too much, eh?
Not too much. No, really slow. Yeah.
Good for you. No, I can appreciate the moving around a lot and having to adjust, getting to know people, being the new kid on the block. So, not many people have experienced that. What's your biggest takeaway? I mean, you mentioned, right? You learned how to connect with people.
I mean, if you've ever been in that situation, or even if you enter like a new job or a new workplace, like you have to kind of assess to see, how people will accept you, right? Like, and how you should approach people and which ones you should approach first, right? So a little bit of it's kind of just laying back, seeing who, like what the environment's like, and then approaching them and trying to build a rapport quickly, right? So it's something that I pretty much have to do every day now, right? So it's been really helpful, I think, in my development, right? But at the time, I hated it. So I don't know how you felt about it, but it was never fun to be the new kid, right?
No, well, as a kid, it's tough. You don't appreciate it as much as you would as an adult, right? And I think that's just normal, right? As we're kids, we don't see things in the same lens.
Yeah.
But one thing for me is I found it's helped me be able to judge character pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think about that? I mean, you mentioned.
Yeah, like who you don't want to try to hang out with right away, and then who you probably will gravitate more towards.
Right.
Yeah, and that happens really quickly, and that happened in every sort of program I've been in. You surround yourself with like-minded people who are heading the same direction as you, and I guess that's what this podcast is going to be about too, right? So, yeah. What
really got you? Sounds like you've been in this sports medicine practice for a long time. Where did that come from? What interested you in that profession?
Well, I used to like run around a lot when I was a kid. I ran some track, ended up getting injured, and I had to, rehab my way out of that, right? So that I can, make it to the track meet and be able to help out the team at that time. And I just thought it was a pretty cool job. I didn't want to have to do overnights. I didn't have to want to work like a lot of weekends and things like that. And I wanted to have a job where it just wasn't the same. I knew for myself, I would have a hard time sitting down all the time for work, just staring at a computer screen or just writing things all day. So I knew I wanted to deal with people, but I didn't want it to be stagnant. I needed to be challenged, right? So I need something that was like a puzzle. So every day I see new people, they have problems. I have to try to figure out what's going on with them and how to help them achieve their goals. And I knew for myself too, that I would have to get into a job that had a little bit of recognition, So getting into this, I started off doing kinesiology at York to head me down this path. And, when I finished my degree there, I got into a nursing program and a physio program. And I kind of had to choose, and I figured that for my own personality, physio would be the better fit.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you mentioned you teach at the University of Toronto. How often are you doing that?
Well, I generally take like a student for about 6 weeks, once a year. I've been asked to help out with labs, so I've gone in there to help out with labs every now and then when they're doing their musculoskeletal component. So I do try to give back. I do try to educate. I do think that I enjoy that. I enjoy sharing what I know with people. It helps you recognize, where your shortfalls are and things you need to look up to when people bring up questions to you and you might not know the answer. So it humbles you a little bit too. It keeps you on top of things, right? So I find that it's easy to get complacent in work, and sometimes you need that little push. And by educating other people, you have to push yourself a little bit, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so entrepreneurship is your game. You've been running your own place for how long now?
This place has been for about 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So doesn't feel that long, right? To me personally. Before that, I was a small partner in another clinic, and that didn't really work out too well. So that's what led to me kind of starting this up in my neighborhood. I wanted to be closer to my family, closer to home, run it the way that I wanted to, build a good culture. So that led me to trying to do this. And it was really scary at first, that's for sure. I actually didn't want to do it. So
really,
I had to be pushed to do it a little bit. So, yeah.
I'm actually surprised that it's only been 4 years, because I feel I attend your practice and I met you through our local gym community at CrossFit Markham.
Yeah.
And just by, the feel of walking into your place and everybody who I know that goes and sees you, it feels like you've been there forever.
Yeah. So I wanted to build a place that felt like a community, that felt like cozy, a bit like home-like, that it's always been there. So we work really hard at that, right? So we try to build a place where it's welcoming, and I've only been there for 4 years, but a lot of the people there have a lot more experience, right? So it's not like we're just new kids, right? Like we have a lot of experience. We're new right now to this area, but it's been growing, and it feels like we've been there for a long time, for sure. For us too, we enjoy it.
From my perspective, it seems like you're a staple in the community, and I would not have guessed that you were only there 4 years. I would have guessed much longer than that. Good for you guys for establishing yourself as a reliable physiotherapy clinic in the area. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into it because the premise of this podcast is really about having my guests open up about what they consider to be their biggest failures in life. And failure is a big term. I understand, it can be perceived negatively, but, when you think about it, what's the thing that may have been the biggest mistake or the biggest loss or the biggest failure that happened to Romano that you pulled the most lessons from in your life?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question, right? Like, I'm sure, I think the other guests have probably told you that too, right? But I guess I've had a lot of failures in life, but if I kind of break it down into one that affected me, it came around my professional life, I guess, right? So, I was spending a lot of time working towards this physio accreditation, that helps to distinguish you from other physios within the field. And it takes years of courses, lots of exams, and eventually you get to a more serious exam. And, I was passing these things, no trouble, never had trouble in school, and gets to this exam and ended up failing it, right? And, after having put in about like 6 months of giving up a day on the weekend to study with a group and then studying for like at home all the time, and then failing this exam after trying so hard, that kind of hit me. Like I had to evaluate, like, what was I doing wrong? Is it me? Is it how I was approaching things? Was I not doing things properly? So that was a bit of a hit to me too. It was a bit earth-shattering because I was used to getting high marks, being a high achiever. And if I tried really hard, I just expected to do well, and that didn't happen this time. So it made me reevaluate how things were done. And I had to try to surround myself with people who basically mentors who had been through the process and had been successful, and how did they approach it, and could they give me feedback in terms of what I was doing wrong? Can they change how I was thinking, right? So I ended up doing that. I ended up surrounding myself around a lot of great therapists who could take me through the steps of what to expect, how to approach the exam, how to write the exam. I read books from other gurus in our field who just to see what their thought process was like. And it kind of like led me to it showed me what I was doing wrong. Yeah. So basically, when I was looking at this test, I was writing down, like, for example, someone has elbow pain. I was able to say, this is what's happening. This is what's happening with the person. And I was right. But the examiners wanted to see what you also thought was wrong, like didn't count for those, what didn't cause that pain. So basically, I was just getting straight to the answer without showing the work of like how I had ruled out all these other cases that it probably wasn't. Because that just seemed inefficient to me. But they want to see that you've already ruled those things out, right? So I had already said like, this is what's wrong with the person, but not like I already ruled these out in my head because, I just know it's not these things. But I had to show the reasoning as to why. And then it also led me to give feedback on how they were approaching their exams. So the way it used to work was we take these little courses with exams, and there was a passing mark. And once you hit that passing mark, the examiner stopped marking it because you already passed. So you never got feedback on that part that I failed. So I had to talk to them to try to get them to change that because I wasn't the only one that was going through this.
Right.
So basically, it eventually led to them changing how they do the exams altogether for the educational system that we go through. So now instead of them kind of just marking to that passing point, they take that component and they treat it separately so that everyone gets feedback so they know how to approach it properly.
Right.
Right. So it eventually led to a change in how, these exams are run.
So you had this dream. You wanted to become a physiotherapist. You had to pass this exam. You failed the exam.
So I was already a physio. I had been working for a while.
Yeah.
I was already successful, had a caseload. I was a director of a clinic.
Right.
I was doing well. This is an extra accreditation.
Okay. So now you're already all that. And then you failed the exam for the next level.
Yeah. So just to go to that next little bit, and I was like, what happened to me? Right? Like, how can I get through this? Right? Like I did everything I could for 6 months. Like, what can I do differently?
Yeah.
So I had to evaluate how I was thinking and get people to tell me, this is what you're doing wrong. Right?
What were you feeling? What were you feeling at the time? Like, I can only imagine it must have been uncomfortable when you received that notice that you failed the exam. But what kind of feelings were you experiencing?
Well, I was exhausted because I had just given 6 months of basically a lot of my personal life away to try to prepare for this. And just the thought of having to go through it again, because they only offered this once a year.
Once a year.
Right?
Okay.
Once a year. So if you fail it, you got to prep again for another 6 months and then try to write it again. And now I knew that I could fail. So I was like, oh boy, I can actually fail at something. Like, how do I get over this? Right? How do I approach it so I don't fail again? Yeah. And I had to just surround myself around other people that could take me through it. And it made me reflect and be like, okay, well, I'm the sort of person who needs to be able to have someone to bounce ideas off of more regularly than what I had. Like when I first started at the place I worked at the time, there were a lot of people to mentor me through, but they all left the job. So then all of a sudden I'm by myself. I'm like the top dog, right? There's no one for me to go to. So I had to kind of basically leave that job, go to another place where they had people that could kind of take me through it, take me under their wing, basically. So those people really helped me through.
A lot of people would probably experience that sort of failure. It was a literal failure. You failed the exam.
Yeah.
And might not be motivated to want to do it all over again. Yeah.
And a lot of people did do that. So, and that's sort of what the association was finding. They were finding that a lot of people are getting held up at this exam and never going past it. Right. So when you look at the number of people who are in these courses, for 3 to 5 years beforehand, they get to this exam, then they just stop. They never get to the next. There's another level beyond that, right? So with more exams. So they just stop there. So they kind of changed the whole system to take people through so that they can be successful, right? So you're not setting up these tests to like keep people down. You want to kind of take them through and educate them, and think of what the end goal is, right? So it was interesting. Yeah.
And then, so you wrote it the following year?
Wrote it the following year. And after having surrounded myself around the right people and practicing a little bit differently than I normally would have, putting myself out there, writing up some practice cases, giving to them to be brutally honest with me, to tell me what I did wrong, what I did right, and how to approach it. I passed the next time, right? And haven't failed an exam since, right? But at the time I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to fail again, but I had to try. You can't be afraid to fail. You have to approach things and give it a go, right?
And what does that mean for your business moving on to that next level? What was the importance?
It gave me the confidence to know that I can treat a lot of people, that I can get over things, that if I fail, I can get over it if I just surround myself around the right people, get the right ideas, and try to keep going. It gave me more confidence to open it up, because of the accreditation too. You've been to the clinic, right? So, the strip that we're on has a lot of competition. Yeah. Right. And people say I'm crazy for opening up there because there's a established clinic across the street. There's chiro clinics around. There's massage therapy clinics. So there's a lot of competition in that area. So it just made me feel like I was on equal footing, right? At least, if not above some of the people when I came in. So, gave me the confidence to kind of go ahead and do it, right?
I love it. Yeah. Some great resources. You surrounded yourself by people to help you get through it the second time. You realized that you needed a shift in mindset, that you had to try again if you wanted to open your practice, and you had to change your way of thinking. Good for you for doing that. I would imagine I would take that as advice for listeners who may be through a similar situation where they're failing a test or an exam and they've got to retake it. But What other pieces of advice would you give someone who's going through similar situation?
I think with any sort of profession or anything you're approaching, you want to find a mentor or a coach early in your career or whatever it is you're doing, whether that's sport or any activity. Because a lot of the evidence shows that it helps you accumulate skills a lot more quickly, right? So that's with anything, like running, that's with like education, that's with hands-on, that's with any sort of skill that you try to do. So yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces I would have to say. You got to find someone early. You have to accept that you need help, right? A lot of people don't think that about themselves. Like they think that, okay, I'm good where I am. Like I'm awesome. But every now and then you have to be like, okay, how can I be better? So let me find someone to become better, help me become better, right? So that's what led to me kind of, switching jobs to find good mentors. For me, I had to reflect and be like, I need something that's a little bit more accessible daily. So I made that move, and that was a tough thing to do. But that also helped me realize that, no matter where I go, I can create a following. I can treat people well. They'll spread by word of mouth, and I'll be okay wherever I go, right? So it doesn't have to be just here in this one location where I was for 10 years. I was working in the same place. So to leave that was kind of hard, right? And then eventually to leave there and then start my own thing was also difficult because I was based in that community in North Toronto. So leaving and moving up to the community here to start again, I was like, okay, I've done this before. I can do it again. Surround myself with good people, great patients. I have great patients who will just send more and more people. So, I don't sigh when I look at who am I seeing today, right? Like there's none of this like, it's like they're all great people in the neighborhood. So it's been really good.
Awesome. Yeah. I think one piece that I would add to that is try to get a coach or a mentor as early as possible in anything that you do that you want to excel. But also remember, it's never too late. It's never too late to get a coach or a mentor. This
is true. Yeah. This is true. It's true. And you got to find resources too that can help you along the way. So, like take courses, learn more, push yourself a little bit, right? So I've taken courses on, how to build a health business, like how to, grow it, right? How to streamline it so that you don't have to be like hands-on as much, right? So who can you delegate to, like, and reflect, like what are the things that I like to do? What do I hate doing? Who can do it better, right? So who could I have do this for me, right? So,
right.
So there's a lot of that recognition has to come into play.
So you're habitually taking courses on a regular basis to always improve your business. That's something that you do all the time, I figure.
Yeah, so I'll take courses like at least annually, right? Okay. I try to take something on either like a business coaching class or something along those lines, and then something to help my hands-on like physical skills with treating too, right? So it just having those two different things helps me out, right? Like you don't get burnt out from doing one or the other, right? So and then you realize like, wow, I really don't know a lot about this thing. It's a good thing I took this course, right? Like, and you have to realize like, wow, like I thought I was doing okay, but I could do way better. So it's great to realize that.
Cool. And we talk about mentors and coaches. Who are the three most influential mentors to you?
This is a hard question, right? Like, I mean, influential people, like one would have to be my wife, right? Like, she kind of pushed me to go out on my own. Okay. So she kind of had to point out that no matter where I went, I had a busy caseload. Whether that was a new location or a different sort of setting, because I used to work in a hospital before, that was great. Worked in different clinics, and I was always successful with building a patient caseload that would follow me, right? And even if I failed it, say I started this business and it failed, I could always go work somewhere, right? I would always find work, right? Someone would hire me. I have a lot of friends who would just hire me. My mentors.
You have a backup plan.
Yeah. So that was my safety net. She's like, you think it's all like this and that's it. And if you fail, that everything's done, but there's safety there, right? So I've reached a point where I could do that. So you need someone sometimes to kind of help you reset, like, stop being so anxious about it, calm yourself down, let's move forward, right? So that's one person. I have another buddy that owns a clinic, buddy Daryl Viegas. So he mentored me a lot when I was going through that failure of that exam, helped coach me through how to approach it, resources to look at. So having someone with that experience, a couple of years ahead of you, helped out quite a bit. Another sort of like more professional sort of mentor was I took a course by this physio from out west called Diane Lee, and she's an educator. She's well known in our field, at least. And taking her course kind of changed my approach to how I treat people, and I found it's been really effective at trying to help people get better. So I try to pass that on to the physios that I work with that haven't taken those courses yet, right? So now I'm trying to be a mentor to others. I've taken some mentoring courses myself, just to realize like the different styles that people might have. And, but I know myself, I could always use more coaching and mentoring too, right? So, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, man. Sorry.
No, that definitely answers my question. Sounds like you've got a lot of good people in your corner, and part of the reason why you're so successful, right?
Yeah. Appreciate that.
That's awesome. Listen, I could talk to you all day. You've got a really interesting story, and I want to thank you for sharing something that I would imagine a lot of people are experiencing now or have experienced in the past that you got through, and I appreciate you sharing your advice there, because it's not easy failing a test or an exam, but I think it's harder trying to pick yourself back up and do it all over again. And you're an inspiration because you got through it. So
appreciate that, man.
Yeah, so thank you, and I hope our listeners can grab some tidbits from that. And don't forget, don't be afraid to try it again, guys. That's the point here.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Before we go, where can people connect with you online?
They can find me at www.thephysiospot.ca, Instagram, the Physio Spot, all one word, or info@thephysiospot.ca.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Romano. You have yourself a great day.
Thanks. No problem, man. Take it easy.
Take care.